On the west coast, the fish was to the Indians what the buffalo was to the plains people, the staff of life. Once salmon were so plentiful, they could be scooped out of the water by the netful. Within my lifetime, that situation has changed, so that there are no longer enough salmon to support commercial, sports, and Indian fishermen. A northwest Washington tribe, the Lummies, decided to put their ancient fishing skills to work on the problem of declining salmon runs. They built a dike, some rearing ponds, a hatchery, research buildings, and they began the first native aquaculture program in the country. Each year, salmon, released 2 to 3 years earlier, return to the Lummi ponds to spawn. Some are kept as brood stock for the sea ranching program, and the rest are sold to fish markets. The Lummies have an active laboratory research program to chart their progress in the aquaculture field. These coho, or silver salmon, will be kept in rearing ponds until they are ready to spawn. They will produce a new crop of fish to head out to sea and repeat the life cycle of the salmon. More jobs were created for tribal members when the Lummies expanded their operations to include seafood processing and marketing. Salmon from their own aquaculture project, from commercial fishing boats and from Indian fishermen on reservation waterways are handled at this processing plant. From here, the fish will go to public markets. In addition to salmon and steelhead, the Lummies are raising oysters and clams for the commercial market. In fact, their oyster hatchery and research facilities are the most modern in the country. The Lummies are using Indian technology to help solve one of today's problems, and their impact is being felt in the seafood industry. Early Indian technology involved a substance we all know today, petroleum. Of course, the Native American didn't have a car engine to lubricate, but he worked wonders with a substance that was part of the normal environment of many Indians. Now, pumps suck oil from wells to satisfy the tremendous demand, but prehistoric Indians in many areas found it oozing from the ground. 1,000 years before Columbus reached the New World, natives had dug more than 2,000 oil pits in Pennsylvania. In what is now the movie capital, Hollywood, Indians took advantage of the asphalt substance bubbling up from pools in an area we call the La Brea Pits. Prehistoric Indians used the asphalt to waterproof their houses, to seal baskets for holding liquid, as glue, and as a caulking agent for the unique plank boat built by the Chumash Indians. During construction, as each plank was tied into place, a thick layer of asphalt was applied to all edges. Generations of Indians used petroleum for fuel, paint, tonic, bath oil, and face makeup, among other things. The evidence continues to grow that some of the first Americans were passable chemists. You're looking at a piece of flint, a stone highly prized by prehistoric Indians. This particular flint is found only in a 10-mile area of the Texas Panhandle. It's called the Alabates Flint Quarries. Between 500 and 1,000 open-pit mines here were worked by Indians beginning as early as 12,000 years ago. Those people were among the first to employ mining techniques in North America. They had a variety of uses for flint, including axe heads and projectile points. Normally, flint has one characteristic shade, but Alabates flint has a multitude of bright colors and patterns. It holds a sharp edge when chipped and flaked. Alabates flint obviously was a valuable trade item, for it has been found at archaeological digs far away from the Texas Panhandle. Long before whites arrived, Native Americans mined such substances as copper, lead, mica, and coal, while south of the Rio Grande, silver, gold, platinum, and jade were mined. Today, in Arizona, Montana, the Dakotas, Idaho, and Wyoming, Indian people are working to gain control over natural resources on their own lands, some choosing to mine for coal, uranium, oil, and gas, others waiting for hard evidence on the environmental impact of such mining. The native medicine man has been viewed by some as a faker using spiritualistic hocus pocus. However, many of the medicine men were skilled herbalists who regularly used over 200 medicines and drugs that later were included in official pharmaceutical manuals. Moreover, several experts on Indian healing methods now agree that medicine men, with their masks and rattles, had success in psychotherapeutics. They were early psychiatrists. Dr. Robert Bergman of the University of New Mexico Psychiatry Department worked with Navajo medicine men for 6 years.
Well, I was surprised initially at how good they were. I suppose I came with my own share of stereotypes and prejudices, and I had read some that indicated they were of great value. I don't suppose I really believed it until I saw it, and sometimes I saw some very remarkable cures. They were good healers. They were good doctors. What they were best at are things that psychiatrists do today.
There are other Indian contributions to technology. Remember our canal-building friends, the Hohokams? Those amazing people also gave the world this first, the first etching process ever developed. This etched shell, a Hohokam work of 900 years ago, predates the first European etching process by 450 years. Here at the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C., one can also find out that the Indians discovered rubber and invented the syringe. The snowshoe is a Native American invention. Eskimos devised the parka and other cold weather apparel, along with snow goggles. Most of the Eskimo snow goggles were made of wood or ivory, with tiny slits to protect the eyes from sun glare. The dog sled was another of the Eskimo creations. He needed it to travel the Arctic, where the snowfall is generally light, but where it's so cold that the snow remains until well into the summer. The Eskimos were truly an inventive people. They had to be to exist in the Arctic climate. The land of the Eskimo stretches 4,000 miles over a harsh, treeless area hit by storms and sunless gloom in the winter and insects in the summer. Fishing and hunting sustained the Eskimo families. They devised any number of specialized methods and pieces of equipment for fishing and hunting in the frozen north. This man is ice fishing for seal. Oil and meat from this and other mammals, like the walrus and whale, provided nutrients needed by the Eskimos. The seal oil lamp was invented by these Native Americans, as were the snow house and bone hobnails, the predecessor of what today's mountaineers call crampons. Today's Eskimo still goes hunting and fishing, but the snowmobile has replaced the dog sled. In basic ways, however, rural Eskimo life is still very similar to what it was many decades ago. The Eskimo is now more dependent than ever on his artistic skills. Still using ancient methods to carve ivory and bone figurines, this craftsman, like many native people, must sell his carvings to get the cash he needs for today's economy. Economy and transportation go hand in hand in today's society, and Native Americans have had an impact in both areas. Indians were the first United States map makers. Their sketches showed rivers, streams, trails, and villages. As a matter of fact, before freeways straightened lines of travel, our nation's system of roads was built upon old Indian trails. This is one of them. Transportation on waterways was by canoe, and the maritime masterpieces were the dugout canoes. This 50-year-old film shows the dugouts of the Kwakiutls, a northwest coast tribe. The dugout was as seaworthy a craft as was ever designed. The Northwest dugout makers fashioned their craft from huge cedar trees. Prior to the white man's arrival, most small canoes were made from bark or animal skins. They were the models for today's recreational canoes seen on lakes and waterways everywhere. Modern whitewater racers can salute the Eskimos for inventing the kayak. The Eskimos used the kayak for fishing and seal hunting because of its maneuverability, the exact reason the whitewater racers enjoy competing in kayaks today. Design features have not changed measurably since the time the prehistoric Eskimos used them. The impact of this native craft is seen in worldwide sports competition.
In the field of art, the American Indian has contributed greatly to American culture and society. These paintings, for example, represent a unique and highly developed aesthetic expression of the Native American spirit.
Other Native Americans have worked in a variety of artistic forms, but there has been debate over whether Indian art should be classified as simply craft work. When the prehistoric Adena Indian carved intricate designs on this smoking pipe, he was expressing his artistic desire. When the Mimbres people of the Southwest added paint to their pottery, they were adding beauty to an object they used daily. Maria and Julian Martinez of San Ildefonso Pueblo introduced matte black on black pottery. The totem pole was the crowning achievement of the Pacific Northwest Indian artist. Supernatural beings, animals, birds, monsters, or people were usually the decorative elements. Totem poles originated with the custom of carving designs into the supporting columns of a house. Later, they became symbols of status or memorials to the dead. The stately totem pole combined the arts of wood carving and painting. The Navajo woman weaving an intricate blanket design is an artist. For generations, these women working in their hogans have displayed a flair that transcends the mere weaver's craft. The same is true of the Tlingit weavers in Alaska. They were expressing themselves as artists when they worked mountain goat hair and cedar bark into their exquisite chilkat blankets. Indians have been interested in painting for thousands of years. Today, many of the Indian painters have developed bold and recognizable styles, like top Oklahoma artist David Williams, who descended from Apache, Kiowa, and Tonkawa ancestors. Williams attracted national attention after several of his paintings were bought by actor-art collector Vincent Price. Hopi artist Charles Loloma is the nation's #1 native jeweler. He has inspired a new generation of Indian artists to express themselves, and his impact on jewelry design is incalculable. Working mainly with turquoise and silver, Loloma creates his jewelry designs in his studio home at Hautevilla on the Hopi Reservation in Arizona. A school to develop young Indian artists, the Institute of American Indian Arts, was opened in 1962 at Santa Fe, New Mexico. Founded by Loloma and Lloyd Kiva New, a Cherokee, the Institute has had a number of top-flight artists as instructors, including Loloma, painter Fritz Scholder, and sculptor Alan Hauser.
In yet another artistic field, that of show business, the impact of the American Indian has been considerable. Will Rogers was the biggest Indian star of them all.
Born in Oklahoma, he parlayed great skill with a cowboy's lariat into stardom as a newspaper columnist, a radio commentator, a movie idol. Will started out doing rope tricks in rodeos and soon gained a reputation as one of the greatest ropers in the world. Rogers performing a Texas skip. Now the rope goes behind the horse and rolls all the way around to catch the 4 feet from the opposite side. It's a figure 8. Notice the rope cross and the horse steps into it. Another variation of the figure 8, getting both the horse and rider. One hand throwing 2 ropes in 2 places. Now 3 ropes, 2 for the horse and 1 for the rider. Will Rogers bridged the gap between silent movies and talkies. He was proud of his Cherokee blood. Will brought his Indian heritage onto the movie screens.
But you are an American citizen.
Well, I think I am. Folks, Indian, both my mother and father had Cherokee blood, you know. Born and raised in Indian Territory. Of course, I'm not these Americans whose ancestors come over on the Mayflower, but We met them at the boat when they landed.
Indian themes dominated the United States theater in the early part of the 19th century. In the late 1800s, several frontiersmen, including Buffalo Bill Cody, organized Wild West shows. Indians were stars in those Western extravaganzas. When motion pictures replaced the Wild West shows, again the emphasis was on the cowboy Indian theme. Unfortunately, most of the films and Wild West shows stereotype the Indian as the bad guy in the screen dramas of the West. Native Americans have always had a flair for drama and pageantry in their dances and ceremonies back to prehistoric times. This scene was filmed in 1914 by pioneer movie maker Edward Curtis.
The women would gather the vegetable food, and the men would gather the fish and the meat.
Today, there's a new development in show business, Indian theater. A few years ago, Indian playwrights began producing works for Indian actors and directors, and that spawned this new Indian theater movement. One example is an all-Indian repertory company in Seattle called Red Earth. The group performs throughout the Northwest. Some universities are offering classes in Native American theater. This is one such class. Kiowa Hane Gigima, a playwright, director, and producer, teaches the subject. He says there has been a marked change in the theater regarding Indians.
Every time the Indian has been treated on the stage, it has been by somebody else, not the Indian. That situation is changing now. The Indian theater today is working itself from Western European forms, from that point back towards that pure form of theater, which is in the rituals and ceremonies of the older days, older times.
The impact of the Native American has been and continues to be truly significant in the development of our national life. What I have shown you is just a sample. Indians have been elected to Congress. We've had an American Indian vice president. Indians have held positions of leadership in virtually every field of endeavor. Ecologists are just now beginning to understand the importance of Native American traditions with respect to the earth, the sky, and the water. Perhaps former Commissioner of Indian Affairs John Collier said it best. They had an ancient, lost reverence for the earth and its web of life. They had what the world has lost. The world must have it back, lest it die. A renewal of those American Indian traditions may well be the impact of the Native American upon this nation's future.